red-eye flight with drowsy pilots turns into an unexpected event. Even worse, fog is making it impossible to see. There has been no mechanical failure, yet the jet is unknowingly descending rapidly.
Bank angle, bank angle.
What has caused this plane to slam into the ground? Investigators have one job. February the 7th, 1975. Vancouver, Canada. Nearctic Airlines Flight 290 is on a routine trip from Vancouver to Fairbanks. The plane is 3 years old Boeing 737-200. The flight was commanded by Captain Chris Homage. At 32, he's accumulated nearly 9,000 flight hours throughout his career. He is a new pilot, with Nearctic 4 months before the crash. The co-pilot Henry Ville, age 39, had logged 7,000 hours in his career.
The trip to Alaska is gonna be rough. Maybe.
Both of them logged 120 hours in the Boeing 737. Nearctic Airlines was a trunk carrier, a scheduled airline in the United States that operated from 1965 to 2008. Nearctic flew various aircrafts, the Boeing 737, Boeing 727, DC-9, and the mighty 747. Nearctic got its name from a biogeographic realm called Nearctic Realm. The Nearctic Realm covers most of North America, including Greenland, Central Florida, and the Mexico Highlands. The airline flew to every destinations across North America. By the time all the passengers are on board, Flight 290 is carrying 51 people in total, 5 crew members and 46 passengers. The flight cost was cheap. Tucker S. is on a vacation break. He's a businessman traveling to Alaska to go skiing with his peers.
I was seated in economy, behind the wings. I didn't know what seat I was exactly in, since this crash happened long ago.
Nearctic 290 is flying overnight. It's a red-eye flight. It's expected to arrive at 1 to 2 a.m.
I was on a vacation break. I made a lot of money, so I asked my fellow colleagues to join them, you know?
Chris and Henry are assigned to a new route.
This route is new.
Hey, it's gonna be our first time there.
Of course.
He begins his roll down the runway. Not only Chris is new to this route, he is comfortable with his aircraft.
V1. Rotate.
At 8:40, the plane takes off.
Gear hop.
At 9 p.m., the plane is in cruise. Passengers can get out of their seats if they wanted to.
Everything was fine as it is. Nobody seemed to be a bother. Flight attendants were rolling out the drinks and stuff. Yeah, we expected to arrive at Fairbanks in a couple hours or so. I asked a flight attendant for a glass of water. She was very polite. It just tasted like any ordinary water, you know?
Sure.
Everyone has been enjoying this flight so far.
Yeah, a cup of water. Chris, you want anything?
Yeah, same thing as yours.
Get 2, please. Hey, Emily.
Hi.
Oh,
Thank you really much.
Anytime.
thanks. Cheers.
pilots are having conversations to kill time.
Can you dig it? You were far.
It'll take 5 hours to get to Fairbanks, which they will arrive at midnight.
Mostly everyone was asleep when we were in flight. The stewards were doing their rounds and all that. I was full of energy since I had coffee. I had a thought to sit in the back just because the restroom was close by, so I asked for permission to do so, and I got my luggage from the overhead bins and moved to the very back. The stewards or flight attendants were talking about, after the flight and some love since it was the week before Valentine's.
Emily, what you gonna do at Fairbanks?
Oh, I got a business meeting after this flight. I will have fun in the snow. What about you?
That sounds fun. My plan might be the same as yours. Yeah?
That sounds rad.
You cook?
Yeah, obviously I cook. I cook, pretty much everything. I cook the meals on to 1011, which is also my favorite plane.
Some hours went by and I got sleepy, so I decided to doze off. I probably was gonna wake up once we touched down, but it depends on my surroundings. I think like 80% of the people were asleep, even the stewards. I mean, everyone would doze off after midnight struck. I'm getting tired. Same here. Don't worry. We're almost there.
Alaska. It's the biggest state in the United States. Alaska has more than 409,000 natural lakes, at least 1 hectare or bigger. Wetland, permafrost, and marshland cover 700,000 kilometers. The interior of Alaska is the largest region of Alaska. The majority of it is uninhabited wilderness. Fairbanks is the only largest city in the region. At 1:15 a.m., Flight 290 is approaching Fairbanks International Airport. It's dark and foggy.
We were on the last minutes of the flight. People started waking up. Lights on. It was like early morning in the night. The lights were turned on, which I woke up eventually. I had sleep inertia after I woke up, but I forced myself to stay awake.
It was too dark outside. I couldn't see anything out the window. We were landing.
The stewards were moving to their seats.
Gear down. Tried to keep myself awake.
Nearctic 290, you're landing on runway 2L true.
Nearctic 290, landing on 2L true. I can't see shit out there. The fog is too thick.
We have autopilot.
Chris lets the computer do the job.
Descending through 1,000 feet.
Chris, the runway isn't in sight.
That's the problem. We will figure it out. Then I started seeing trees passing by out the window. Then I thought, is this normal?
Suddenly, an urgent alarm fills the cockpit.
Oh no!
Terrain.
We don't even have the runway in sight. I know. Just stay calm.
Chris decides to do a go-around, but there was insufficient distance.
Dries!
The plane's belly grazed some trees.
Come on! Shit!
The left wing clips a tree, causing a roll.
A loud thud happened, and the entire plane rolled to the left. Bags and luggage were falling out, sliding down. I started to brace myself.
Bank angle.
No, I'm
Bank
sorry!
angle.
Flight 290 slams into the ground at 175 miles per hour. It then disintegrated and bursts into flames.
I never expected the plane to crash. It just happened all of a sudden. It was unexpected. I had minor injuries, so I decided to help out the other survivors. I saw an injured man just in front of my seat, so I lent him a hand.
Need help?
There was a steward that survived. He was okay, but with blood. The injured man looked like he was on his final seconds, and he departed before I took him out into the water. Me and the steward climbed up a slope. Then I saw this whole devastation. Fire, bodies, and debris were everywhere. And I witnessed a person in flames. It was the most terrifying moment.
Flight 290 crashes at 1:22 a.m.
Narctic 290. Narctic 290, do you copy? A 737 has gone down.
Remarkably, the tail section containing the last 3 rows of seats is relatively intact.
I sat down near the flaming wreckage. It was hot there, but it wasn't a big deal.
First responders arrived less than 4 minutes of the crash.
I heard sirens getting closer and closer. I just wanted to go skiing, not be in a plane crash.
They then turned their attention to pulling bodies out of the wreckage. Firefighters only need a few minutes to get the inferno out of control.
A firefighter took me and the stewardess away from the wreckage, just so we won't be burning.
Only 2 people survived the crash. An initial survivor died after being pulled out. Captain Chris Homage and First Officer Henry Ville are killed. So are other 2 crew members and 45 passengers.
That thought must have saved my life. The very back separated once we slammed into the ground.
The fires are finally extinguished. All the bodies has been recovered and are stored in body bags. It's the first ever crash Nearctic has. Due to people sleeping and the crash happening after midnight, the wreckage has been left sitting there until the sun rises. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board arrive at Fairbanks just 6 hours later. Investigators begin looking for evidence.
And once we got to the site, it was just complete devastation. The wreckage didn't resemble much of a plane. It's just pieces everywhere.
They examined the wreckage for clues.
One of our field investigators would have been on scene trying to locate the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, which is the most significant part of the investigation.
We aren't really sure why the plane got brought down, since the plane is still in perfect condition. At first, we thought there's a design flaw in the aircraft.
The tail section was raised up, and to be removed from the site, a crane was used to lift it up. We moved pieces of the wreckage.
If both pilots had enough energy, the crash could have been prevented.
After the tail was raised and sitting, the black box was removed from the tail section of the aircraft, which it was located at.
Washington, D.C. Key pieces of wreckage from Flight 290 are taken to the NTSB lab in Washington, D.C.
Because 3 months before, another United Airlines Boeing 737 got the same trim problem. But since the Boeing 737 had a perfect maintenance record and had no recent problems, we skipped the consideration of design flaw.
It takes a while for the investigation to complete. Nguyen Duc Tung is the lead investigator in charge of examining the data from the plane's cockpit voice recorder.
We checked the CVR and it shocked us more. They had an argument on whether land on this heavy fog or divert to nearby airports, also ignored the GPWS warning at the critical moment until there are only 60 meters left from the ground. The captain tried to pull the plane up, but the left wing crashed into a tree, causing it to bank to the left and crashed into the ground. Heavy fog, of course, also contributed to the accident, but mainly it was pilot error, who didn't have enough sleep, reacted too late, and crashed.
Flight 290 was way lower than its intended approach.
213 feet.
It is confirmed that the plane had no problems and was perfectly fine.
We checked the pilot's record. Both only have 190 hours on the Boeing 737, which is rather new. We checked Nearctic's record. They recently had a financial issues. They forced the pilot to go overnight, which is already a violation of pilot's work time limit. We checked the pilot's record again. The captain and the co-pilot only got 4 hours of sleep before the flight, which is already insane enough.
Philip R. consults the plane's manufacturer and interviews other 737 pilots. He concludes that neither anyone made any errors regarding the landing configuration. AFDR animation was later created to simulate the crash of Flight 290. It captures a wide range of parameters, including flight path, altitude, airspeed, and crew actions, which is crucial for investigations. Investigators later determined that both pilots were full of fatigue after midnight. And another problem was the heavy fog. It was thick enough to obscure their views.
These guys were early birds. They weren't ready for an actual night shift. Plus, it was their first time on this route.
Chris and Henry never knew they would start to descent way earlier. They also faced a challenge during the approach to Fairbanks: thick, heavy fog. The fog severely impacts travel, making visibility near zero, which confused both pilots not knowing where they are. The autopilot was used too early.
Fairbanks has ILS. How come 290 didn't land properly?
Fairbanks International has an instrument landing system. The instrument landing system guides planes to land safely during low visibility. But this did not apply for Flight 290.
The plane was following an ILS approach, which was set correctly to capture the localizer signal and track along the runway. But it seems like they started to descend way earlier than what they're supposed to be.
Nguyen jots down every word and bits spoken in the cockpit voice recorder. Investigators were left with one perplexing question. Why did the new pilots were chosen for a red-eye flight?
Nearctic really wanted some pilots to accept a red-eye flight, but nobody cared about it, considering most of them are experienced. So the airline forced some newbies to take a shot. These pilots didn't know much about flying at night, but they went for it.
In February of 1975, the crash of Nearctic Airlines Flight 290 took the lives of 49 people. The final accident investigation report is published more than 2 years after the crash. It lays blame on Nearctic Airlines' pilot work time limit and the crew's over-reliance on the jet's automation. Nearctic chose the wrong pilots for this flight. Yet, pilot fatigue played a major role of Flight 290.
Pilots are human. That's why pilot error exists. We sometimes aren't perfect.
The National Transportation Safety Board determines that the probable cause of this accident was the captain's failure to adequately brief and execute the non-precision approach, and the first officer's failure to effectively monitor and cross-check the captain's execution of the approach. Contributing to these failures were pilot fatigue and Nearctic Airlines' inadequate flight crew training. A year after the crash, a lawsuit was filed against Nearctic Airlines on behalf of families.
This crash still haunts me till to this day. I still remember seeing the bodies scattered around. Just very traumatized about that day. Something I can't just move on, something which you can't still recover from after such disaster.
Nearctic Airlines has regret forcing pilots to do red-eye flights.
It really took a dramatic turn in my life, especially as a plane crash survivor. It impacted my mental toll, couldn't sleep. I was thinking of that every day.
At the end of the day, Flight 290 really changed red-eye flights for Nearctic. Only experienced pilots are now chosen to do a red-eye flight.